now that we've finished the design of our car, we need to first add axles and then add the wheels. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to add axles. One of the concepts that we're going to learn in this video is construction geometry. Creating geometry, shapes, boxes, squares, rectangles, whatever, that's geometry. Creating geometry that we use to create actual parts of the car, okay? And that'll make sense as we go along. Now, the first thing I want to do is to protect the surfaces of the car from being damaged by any work that I do at this point. So the very first thing that you're going to want to do is select your car, two-finger click, and make it a group. Now it is protected from any new geometry. So in other words, new geometry will not blend with the car. The car is now a separate item. All right, next I'm going to get my tape measure tool, and I'm going to click anywhere on the red axis, and I'm going to pull out, making sure that I'm on green axis. Make sure you're not on blue axis. If you go certain directions, it'll go blue. Okay, you want to make sure that you're coming out on green axis, and you're going to come out a ½ inch. So I'm going to type 0.5 and press enter. I will then get my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw from origin anywhere toward the back of the car out to the guideline. Okay, and then I'm going to take this rectangle and I'm going to push it down 0.75. Now, this rectangle is not, nor will it be, part of the car. But we need this rectangle to create our axles, because without it, we would not be able to draw the axles straight. Okay, so let me show you what I mean by that. If I were to draw a circle on this part of the car right here and attempt to push it through, that is not going to go straight through the car, and therefore the car will not go straight. So we need to make sure that the axle is perpendicular to the center line of the car, and that's why we're going to create the construction geometry. So again, I'm going to create a guide on green axis coming out 0.5 from red axis. I'm going to draw a rectangle from origin toward the back of the car out to the guideline, and I'm going to push that rectangle down 0.75. Now what that gives us is a surface right here that is parallel with the center line of the car. So then when we create our axle and push it through, the axle will be perpendicular to the center line of the car. However, knowing that we want to get rid of this rectangular prism, I'm going to go ahead and make it a group. So I'm going to triple click, so click, 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 and then two-finger click. I'm going to make that a group. Now I'm going to get my circle tool. With the circle tool, I'm going to find the midpoint on this front edge. So I'll orbit a little bit so you can maybe see that a little bit better. So I'll get my circle tool and find midpoint in this group. Now I'm not going to click here. I'm just going to start moving the mouse straight back, so I'm coming back on red axis. And then when I'm in approximate area of where I want the axle to go through the car, I'm going to click, start drawing the circle. Now, when you're drawing the circle, it's very important to stay on axis, okay? Meaning that notice how when I'm dragging out after I clicked, I'm on the red axis. I'm not somewhere on black axis or somewhere random, okay? I'm on red axis. So I click, move out on red axis, and then I need to type in the radius of my axle. So for example, if I chose 1/8 inch as my axle size, my radius would be 1/16, or half of 1/8. If I chose 3/16, it would be 3/32. And if I chose 1/4, my radius would be 1/8. So I chose an axle size of 3/16. So I clicked, move along red axis, type in 3/32, because that's the radius of a 3/16 inch axle, and I press return. Then I'm going to push the axle through the car, and I know that on this side of the car, the axle is sticking out from the edge of the car, because there's the edge of the car, right along that plane. I know that my axle is going to stick out a 1/2 inch here. So then from this edge of the car, I want it to also stick out a 1/2 inch. So the length of my axle is actually the width of my car plus a 1/2 inch on the left and a 1/2 inch on the right. So my car's 3 inches. 1/2 inch on the right would be 3.5 inches. Another 1/2 inch on the left would be 4 inches. So in other words, it's the width of my car plus 1 inch. So in this case, my axle's 4 inches. So I type in 4 and press return. So again, all of that together, I've drawn the circle, click on the axle, push it through, I type 4 and press return. And now there's my axle. I no longer need this box. This was the construction geometry right here. I needed that to draw a straight axle. So now that I'm done with it, I can simply press delete. Okay? I don't need this guideline anymore. I'm going to select it and get rid of that as well. Now, I know that my back axle is going to be the same length and the same diameter. So I'm going to make a copy of this axle and move it back. But before I do that, I need to group the axle. Otherwise, if I just get the move tool and attempt to move it, this is one of the things that could happen. If I just get the edge of it, okay, if I grab the face of it, again, same thing. If I grab it here, that's going to work, sort of. But I do want to make it a group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to triple click it. So 1, 2, 3. That selects all parts of the axle. 2-finger click, make it a group. Now, I'm going to go to top view. And now I want to make a copy of this axle and move it to the back. So to do that, I get my move tool. I'm going to press Option. If you're on a Chromebook, you're going to press Control. So I press Option, select my axle, and move along red axis until the axle is near to where I want it. Okay, so I think I want this axle sitting about right there. So I drop it there and kind of take a look at the front and say, well, you know, I think I want to move the axle forward a little bit. So I can click on the axle and move it up a little bit. Okay, so from top view, you can kind of get an idea of where the axles actually land on the car. So then I'm going to save the drawing and move on to the next step, which is adding wheels.